All right, good morning. I hope you're doing well. If you don't mind coming in and finding a seat, we certainly would appreciate that. It's about time for us to get started so we can be finished on time. And today is a little bit different for what we normally do, so you're really paying attention to me, all right? So that's okay, I'm used to that. Today's a little bit different than what we normally do. Obviously, reality of what we're going to be doing today is a little bit heavy as far as things go. But the reality of this also is that we live in a broken world. We deal with broken people. And it's it's better to have a plan than to not have a plan. So most of you guys may or may not know that Doug Hardy and his team of people who help him every week help us to have a plan in case something were to go wrong. He's going to tell us about that today and about what we need to do in case something were to ever happen in our church. Now, obviously, Doug and I were talking this morning. We said that this is one of those deals when you hope this is all just one big waste of time, right? And that really is our hope. But if it's not, then we'd be thankful to be ready for that. So I'm just going to say a quick prayer and then hand this over to Doug and run back and run his power. All right? So let's pray. Father, we thank you for our time together. Lord, you are a gracious God, and we are so thankful for you. We also know that you're a sovereign God. Lord, we don't spend a whole lot of time worrying about what might happen. But we also know, just like we've seen in Joshua over the last several weeks, you still call us to plan, and you call us to be prepared, and you call us to take action. And Lord, this is a way that we want to be faithful to protect ourselves, to protect each other, just to be ready in case the worst were to happen. Lord, I'm thankful for Doug and for those who help him each week to help us to be prepared in this case. Lord, we pray certainly that you would protect us, continue to just bless us in all the ways that you have. But Lord, again, thank you for gifting people to have this ability to lead, to train, and to help, Lord, in these certain times. So, Father, we thank you. We love you. We pray these things in your precious and holy name. Amen. Yes.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Everybody hear me okay? Hi. I'm not used to holding a microphone, so y'all be patient with me as I do this. Usually my classes are a lot smaller than this. Those of you, and I think most everybody here knows who I am. I am Doug Hardy, and I am the coordinator for the security team. I'm not the leader. We don't have a leader. We have a coordinator. And I want to echo exactly what Mark said. The team is the one that does the work. It's not me. It's a group. Not only do we work on the security aspect of things, but we also work on the medical end to make sure that if we have a medical emergency, that we are prepared for those kind of emergencies. So thank you all for coming. Again, we hope that this is all just a waste of time and that we're telling you something and that you can stick it in the back of your mind and hold on to it. But it doesn't just apply here. What I want to talk about today is going to apply to wherever you are and to know how to act when a threat does happen. The slide in the passage that's up here, this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about church security and safety, but make no mistake, our security purely comes from God. Amen. He is the one that secures us. I do think He allows us to be able to act more responsive or more quickly so that maybe we can do certain things. He's given me a skill set that I'm more than willing to share. And so what I want to do today is kind of go over several safety issues, but I also it's going to be focused on an active shooter or an active threat situation, and in case we have it. While we're going through it, don't just think of this room and what would happen in this room. Think of if you're in a Sunday school class with children. Think if you're in the other building or if you're in the youth building. And so as you think about this, because it's awfully easy to focus just on this room, which is very limited to what our response can be. But there are many other areas in this church that anything like this could happen. All right? Go ahead to the next slide for me. So here's what we want to learn today, or here's what we want to take out of today. We're going to talk about what is a threat or what are our threats to a place of worship. And we want to provide some insight in how we can prevent those things. This is very important that you guys are very much a part of our safety. You are eyes that see things, your eyes that know. And I'll use this example real quickly. In the Texas shooting, which was our most recent church shooting that made major news, there was a lady sitting next to the guy when he walked down and sat down, her and her daughter. They got up and moved. They saw it. They knew something was wrong, yet they didn't tell anyone. Okay, so it's very important that you are the eyes and that you're willing to communicate that. We'll talk a little bit about that. Learn what our options are if something does happen. There's 3 general responses: fight, flight, or freeze. That's normally what people do. They do one of those 3 things. So the freeze thing I can't do a whole lot for. If you're a person that freezes up, you're a person that freezes up. But I can tell you how to kind of prevent that a little bit. All right? Understand what to expect after a major incident. So we all think about this. What am I going to do during the incident? There are several guidelines that you need to understand as it comes to dealing with law enforcement as they respond to these incidents that you need to be aware of and that you need to know what not to do as much as what to do. All right, go to the next one. So what are our threats? When most people think of threats, we think of active shooters, but there are several different kinds of threats that we have. Anytime we have a gathering or a group of people together, especially in a confined space like this, there are several things that we have to be worried about. We have to worry, obviously, about active shooters, about church disruptions. There's the thing going around right now. If you go on YouTube, you can see it, where some people who are anti-religious, basically, as a general rule, or two of them will go into a church. One of them, during the sermon, will stand up and start debating the pastor. And the other one films it. Then they go on YouTube and post that to show the reaction of the church. And so it's a kind of a new thing. It started in Tennessee, but it's working its way around the United States now. So we have those kind of things. Though they're not causing any force or any damage or any danger or anything like that, there is the disruption. So we need to be aware of that. We as a team, after the second service, are going to meet and we're going to discuss some of those things and how we deal with those. Kidnapping and domestic problems. This is actually pretty common in churches, especially in divorces. The one parent will take the child to a nursery and drop them off, go to Sunday school or to church service. The other parent shows up and says, "Hey, I'm here to get my kid." Takes the kid. They may not have the right at that point to have that child. So that's one of the things we have to look for. Injuries and medical incidents, obviously. We've had more of that than we've had anything else here. And we've had actually several medical incidents in the last few years. Fire and weather-related incidents, those obviously would be storms and all that. We're not going to hit on that a whole lot. And there are many more that if we broke it down we could talk about. But primarily today our biggest focus is going to be on active shooter. All right? And that's cut off, I'm sorry. That's a different slide program that we're watching this through. So fortunately I've read it enough. I should know it all. So let's define our active shooter or give it a definition. It basically says an active shooter or threat is an individual actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill people in a confined and populated area. In most cases, obviously active shooters would use guns, but one of the things we're seeing is machetes and knives and things like that being used also. So it's not just guns. But there may not be a pattern or a method to their madness. Now, sometimes there is. Sometimes it's domestic related and they're going after one or two particular people. Either way, it's a threat to everyone anytime a firearm is being discharged or a knife is being wielded in a confined space. All right, going to the next one. All right, so what motivates active shooters? We already hit on this a little bit. Sometimes it's religious beliefs or lack of religious belief. We all know, and if we watch the news, we all know about Muslims and that kind of thing. Of course, the news is going to highlight everything that's negative, but it could be just that a person is an atheist. They're simply mad at the church. for different reasons. Could be domestic issues. We talked about that, where a husband and wife are going through a divorce. One of them thinks the problem belongs to the church, so they come to take it out on the church. Disgruntled members, who that was the deal with Texas shooting. He was a homeless man that had been helped by the church. The church eventually said, "Look, we can't help you anymore," and that's why he retaliated and did what he did. It could be an employee. Now, we have a pretty small employee base, but, and heaven forbid, I think all of our employees are pretty good, but it could be someone who maybe got released from a job and they're mad at the world. And of course, all of this, as Lori and I talked about this morning, does kind of fall under mental instability. Whether it's those other reasons, because the average person who is not suffering through mental issues is not going to respond in the way that an active shooter or an active threat would respond. Let's go to the next one. All right, so here's your part. Stop the problem before there's a problem. We've seen this come around a good bit. If you see something, say something. And listen, I say this with caution because what we don't want is, I don't want people, just because someone comes in and they look different than us, or they come in and they got things that we may think is a little bit off, telling all the other people sitting around, "Man, did you see that guy? He kind of looks a little odd." If you do see something you think truly is a problem, don't be afraid to come to either staff here, come to myself or anyone else on the security team, or go to Pastor Mark, anyone, and say, "Hey, I've noticed this." And I had a guy tell me one time, come to me during service. We had a young man came and sat down. He was completely innocent, but he did put off signs that kind of gave us some indication. And all we do is simply make sure that we're watching that person, okay? But do report your concerns if you see something that you think stands out. If you see an odd package laying around, anything like that, tell us. We'll check it and see what it is and make sure that it's not a threat to us. All right, go to the next slide. All right, so we have to be prepared to take action. And this is something that really is a mindset that people really need to be aware of. But our actions do change how things turn out. And you have to be mentally as well as physically prepared. And I understand that some people have physical issues and can't do as much as others. But you mainly have to be mentally prepared to take an action. This is where that freeze part comes in. If you're not mentally prepared for it, then it's going to scare you and you're going to react out of just natural instinct. And when you do that, that's where you start to fall apart. Dave Glassman, who is a colonel, wrote a book on different survival techniques. He always says that we sink to our lowest training during stress rather than excel beyond what we've trained. So go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, so we have 3 responses. How many's ever been to an active shooter class before? Okay. What we used to teach a good bit was run, hide, and fight. We've kind of changed that verbiage a little bit, because if I tell you to run, I want to make sure that you're running away from the threat, rather than just running. Doesn't solve anything. So what we use now is avoid, deny, and defend, and we're going to break all 3 of these down. But you have to be able, when you think about these 3 things, because all 3 are options, and we want you to do one of these 3 things. Preferably, we want you to avoid. Obviously, that's the easiest thing to do, is avoid it, even if it means we can avoid it by doing something before the action actually happens. That's ideal. That's what we want to do. We want to be able to stop any threat before it actually is truly a threat to us. But during a situation, you have to act quickly. Oftentimes, you don't have time to think about what would I do during the incident. These are things that should have been thought about long before the incident takes place. But we want you to protect your life and those around you and those that you love. Some people are going to just follow. Some people are followers. It's natural. Whatever you do, that's what they're going to do. And then some people are natural leaders. And I'm going to tell you, you'll never guess who those people are. We do a lot of training with our officers, and a lot of the officers that we think is the leaders that are going to take the lead are the ones that wind up following, and those that are quiet and kind of stand behind are the ones that actually take the lead and take off with the team. So just know that in an incident, if you excel to a natural leadership position, you're probably going to be the one people are going to be following. So make sure that you're thinking about what everyone else is doing, that it's not just you that's trying to come out on this. All right, go to the next slide. All right, so the first action that we want to go through is avoid. And if there is an escape route, if there's a way we can get out, then obviously that's what we want to do. We want to make that escape route. If you see down there, I've written what if. This is something we have taught in law enforcement and in defensive driving for years. If you already have pre-thought your action, it's much easier to take that action. When you sit down in a room, one of the first things you should do is look around you. What is around you? Where are your exits? How do you get out? And this is not just for an active shooter. What if this place catches on fire? Where are you going to leave? Then where are you going to go to? So if you've pre-thought all of these things and constantly ask yourself, we don't want to live in fear. That's not what I'm trying to tell you. I'm just trying to tell you need to be constantly thinking. You can ask Lori, when we go to a restaurant, my back is to the wall and I look at the door. Any cop that's worth his weight in blood is going to do the same thing. All right? It's just what we're taught to do. We want to see everything that's going on. Leave your belongings behind. The only exception that I'll give you to this is if you have a weapon in a bag that may be your defense later on, grab that. But if you've got to run into danger to grab that, don't worry about it. Go ahead and leave. Get out. Anything you have is not worth your life. There's not a possession that you have that is worth your life. It's awfully easy for us to get focused on ourselves when we're ready to escape. But really, in reality, we don't want to. We want to try to help as many people as we can. We want to try to, if I've got a group next to me, that doesn't mean you've got to stand there till everybody gets out. If our security team acts the way it should, hopefully you won't even finish getting out of the building before we've ended the incident. That's what we want. But just know it can go on. So we want to help any others that we can escape. Don't call 911 till you're safe. Don't try to do it while you're running down the hall or trying to get out. Call 911 once you're in a safe location. We'll talk a little bit about calling here in just a minute also. All right, go to the next. If we cannot avoid, the next thing we want to do is deny. We want to deny the threat access to us. And that can be done in several different ways. Number one, we want to hide out away from the shooter or the threat. That may mean a closet. It may mean under a cabinet. It may mean just in a cubbyhole somewhere where you can make an escape after the shooter or the threat is passed. But you want to hide out. If you're in a room, and we've talked a little bit about this, and this is one of the safety things that we're addressing now. We want to be able to wedge doors closed. We want to be able to hide there any time. And one of the things that we have done as a church to help promote not just security, but the safety or the protection of our teachers in classrooms is we've put windows in our doors. And the reason we've done that is because that way people can walk by and see what's going on with their children. And it helps with protecting the teachers from allegations of abuse or anything like that. So we decided to do that. And we'll talk at the end of this a little bit about some of the things we're trying to do. But you want to wedge that door or block the door with furniture, prop chairs under it, anything like that that will make it harder for that person. As a general rule, when a threat, especially if it's a random type shooting, they're trying to kill as many people as they can, so they go through as quickly as they can. They're trying to do as much as they can, as quickly as they can. So if that door is hard for them to open, they may know someone's in there. It's obvious if there's no other entrance or exit to that room and they can't get in, there's probably someone in there. But They would rather go where the mass is and be able to do their damage there. All right, so you remain quiet, turn off your cell phones. We talked a little bit about this morning. We would hope everybody already has their cell phone silenced, but as you know, it's probably not true. We see on a regular basis, and I've been guilty of this, so I can't complain. But reevaluate your ability to escape and prepare to defend. So anytime that you go into a hiding spot or you're hiding, then realize that I may get an opportunity to escape. If I know that threat has left, whether I can see it or hear that it has left, I may now try to make an escape away from them. So that we go back to the avoid stage. But understand, if that person finds you, you may have to go to the defend stage. And we'll talk about that next. Go ahead. So defend. So this is if your life, and it's come down to you and them. And let me tell you something. In a congregation like this, there is not a lot of escape. And I thought about this as I was going over all this in my head. These people over here are in worse shape than these people over here, because these are near the door. Now, that being said, I don't want everybody to sit over here. Okay. But we are very limited in an open room like this as to what can happen. The good thing is we are blessed in this church to have a lot of security with either current or ex-law enforcement or military experience that know more how to act in situations. Our hope is and our goal is that we respond to anything that would happen quickly. So if we look at the Texas incident, one of the things that comes to mind is everybody went to the floor. We never teach people to go to the floor, but it's a common reaction. That's what they did. They went to the floor. It actually worked for them. And so keep that in mind. I will tell you this, if you see somebody running towards the threat, please move out of their way and get down, because that's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to get to that threat. The Texas deal, I can tell you from the years that I've shot and the people that I teach to shoot on a very regular basis, that was a God-guided bullet. The distance that it was, under the stress that he was under, that was an exceptional shot. And so God guided that bullet to stop that threat. Some of the things we can do if we're defending against is be aggressive. I always say use the inner beast inside of you. Let it come out. Scream, yell. Every one of you have some type of weapon on you, whether it's just your own body, or whether it's an ink pen, or whether it's a pocket knife, or whether it's a gun, or whatever it is. Now, I do want to take a second here and hit on something. In the state of Georgia, a church has to decide whether they want to be a weapon-free zone or not be a weapon-free zone. We have chosen as a church that this is not a weapon-free zone. Now, we don't advertise that either way, that we are weapon-free or not a weapon-free. That being said, I very strongly encourage you, if you're going to bring a weapon or carry a weapon with you, that you train on a very regular basis with that weapon. The last thing you want to do, and the last thing we want you to do, if you're sitting on this side and our threat's over here, is to shoot across a group of people and hit an innocent person trying to shoot that person. We are taught, and in law enforcement, we address the threat. We move to it, and that closes the gap, and that's the way we're going to react to it. That's the only part that really scares me about the average person having a gun, and I have no idea who has guns in here, but I would tell you, please get training on it. Please know your limitations. And know that if you're a good shooter without stress, you're going to be an average shooter under stress. Okay, it goes way down. But yell, scream, all of these things are disorienting. Why do you think they throw flashbangs in a house when they go in? It's disorienting to a person, and it makes them their mind. It overwhelms their mind. But we have to overwhelm that threat. If one person attacks, everybody needs to attack. It is a team effort. Don't leave that one person to try to protect you. Everybody that is close to that person should be attacking that person. And obviously our goal is to stop the threat. Our goal is not to kill anyone. Our goal is simply to stop the threat. And then the last one I have on there is fight like your life depends on it, because it could very well depend on it. Okay, this is not just your life, it's the life of others. So fight like it does depend on it. All right, next slide. All right, so what do we expect after the incident? Understand that anytime you have an incident like this, you're going to have very high emotions. And those very high emotions bring out different actions from different people. And I've listed a couple of them up there. It may be simply sadness, panic, shock. It can range from a whole lot of things. If you watch, it's really funny because in law enforcement, when we have an incident such as the Texas incident, we all sat down in groups and we watched it slowly and in pieces and go back and watch it again to try to see what's happening. In other words, we want to know our enemy. We want to know what people think when they do certain things. There was a elderly guy who sat like 2 rows in front of where the shooter was in the Texas church. And when the shooting started, that man never moved. He sat right in that pew and never moved. Now, we joke that he couldn't hear it, but it was a shotgun. If you've ever been around a shotgun, you got to be pretty deaf not to hear a shotgun. But he never moved from his seat. He stayed seated the whole time. And so there are a lot of different things that happen to us when all of this happens. So this is a time when someone has to be able to calm yourself. You have to calm yourself down. You have to think a little more clearly. Now that's hard in panic. When lead is flying around, it's really hard to adjust. We do a lot of sim training where we shoot sim guns and it shoots out like a BB. I've seen officers absolutely, now it's not deadly, it hurts, but I've seen them absolutely lock up. These are trained officers, lock up and not know what to do. What they've been trained, we just got through training them how to act to it, and then they don't act anything close to what we train them to do. All right, so go to the next. Render aid. This is not something that happens during the incident and in the area where the incident takes place. The way we refer to an area, if a shooter was in here, we would refer to this as a hot zone. Then there are warm zones, and then there are cold zones. The warm zones, you have some safety, especially after a team comes in to try to take care of the active shooter or the active threat. While they're pursuing them, you have a warm zone that can come back into play, but that is actually where aid starts, and then it moves out into the cold zone. So there are several things that we can do to render aid. How many of you know where the AEDs are in this church? Okay, we have 2 AEDs in this church. Okay, this is an automatic electro something sort of defibrillator. An AED is a cardiac machine that actually shocks the heart and causes it to start back up if it stops. All right? We have one at the top of these stairs, and there's one in the new youth building. All right? We also have a first aid bag or kit that sits in the main office here in the church under the table. There's a little table that says if you go in the door, it's on the left, it's down. We have people that keep that up to date. We have people that check our AEDs and make sure. We have fire extinguishers throughout the church, mounted on the wall. So get to know those things. Get to know where they are. If you want to go, I'm sure Cheryl don't care. She'll show you where that bag is in her office. Look on the walls, walk over to the youth house, and know where those things are because you may need those things. All right? Be prepared to render aid not only to others but to yourself. Inside that bag are some tourniquets that you can wrap. So if you have an extremity wound, you can stop the bleeding. The old saying of don't use tourniquets is kind of out the door now. Tourniquets are a really big thing that we've learned we can use as long as they're used properly. All right, next slide. All right, so when law enforcement does get here, now, I cannot speak for the Pike County Sheriff's Department because I don't know how they train. I can tell you the way generally law enforcement trains is that we go immediately to the threat, whether you're an officer by yourself or whether you're a group of officers. One of the things we learned in Columbine, which was probably one of the first ones most of us can remember of active shooters, I don't know if y'all know, but the SWAT team, they waited till the SWAT team arrived to go into that school. And that's why they had so many people killed in that school. So law enforcement now, what we train our people is, it doesn't matter if you're the first one there, you signed up for this job, it's time to go in and address this threat. So when they come in, that's where they're going. If you're injured and laying there and hollering and screaming for help, they've been trained to step over you and keep going to the threat. That's what they do, okay? Don't be mad at them. Don't think they're not doing their job. They are doing their job. They're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. But knowing that that's what they're going to do, then they may be hollering at you to get out of the way. They may push you to the ground. They may push you to the side. Whatever they need to do to get to that threat, they need to go straight in. So try to give them that avenue. Now, how you can help them is if the shooting is not going on at the time, point and say, they're that way. Give them direction as to where they need to go, because if the shooting is not presently going on, because that's what we're listening for, we're listening for shots or people screaming, and that's where we're going to respond to. All right? Don't expect them to stop and assist you. If you're injured, doesn't matter how bad you're injured, if you're scared, don't grab them, don't hold on to them, don't do any of those things. Let them go do their job, and then when all of that's done, now they can come back and start helping you. All right? But until they stop that threat, it's only going to escalate and get worse and worse. And we would rather them be able to stop that threat if we, as a team, can't do that. Okay? All right, let's go to the next one. All right, so when you're engaging with law enforcement, so they're coming in the door and you're running or screaming or whatever you're doing, trying to get out. And the one thing I will tell you, or some things I will tell you, is don't make erratic movements. They have no idea who the threat is. As they're coming in, not only are they having to go to where they were told the threat is, they're also having to watch people. The Parkland shooting, that guy put his hands up and walked outside the school just like everybody else. He put the weapon down. They caught him a block away as he was trying to escape. So they don't know who is the threat. They're simply going in and trying to find it. So be careful when you are approaching them. Don't run towards them. Keep your hands up and fingers open. Hands are high, finger open. I always tell people, act like you're in a holiness church. So hands high, fingers open, and start out the door. One of the things that we teach people, if you've not already exited the building, watch where law enforcement is coming from. They're coming from a safer direction. So you can go past them and go out, because as they've come in, they've quickly tried to clear as they come in. Don't block the door. Don't stop him. But don't ask him for questions or directions or what. They'll probably be telling you, get out. That's probably the first thing. Get out, get out, get out. They want you out of the building as quickly as they can get you out of the building. Once you leave the building, understand you need to know where to go. If you leave this building and just step outside that door, there's nothing that stops that threat from moving outside this door. What we teach into our schools and our churches is you have wooded areas, go into those woods. Get spread out. Now, I can tell you, as a parent, I can tell you that if my child is in that nursery, that's probably where I'm going to go. I'm probably going to go get my child. That's expected. We understand that. But once you pick that child up, be gone. If you're a nursery worker, it's your job to get those children to a safe place. All right? So to move those out. And we are going to do some training this year with our teachers, and we want to make sure that they understand what to do, where the hiding, try to help them find the hiding places in their rooms, those kind of things. And I'm telling you, it's extremely hard to tell a 2-year-old to be quiet, because they're not going to be quiet. All right? But get into the safest place you can get into. All right? Go ahead. All right. Some of that highlighted, I didn't mean to highlight. So it's obviously that's the new program. So, all right. So once it's all over with, the threat has been stopped. We can't just get in our cars and go home. All right. There's information that has to be gotten. Number one, we need to account for everybody. We need to make sure that everyone's here. If you get in your car and go home and somebody says, well, hey, so-and-so was in Sunday school class this morning, I don't see them anywhere. Now we have to start a search looking for that person. So we want to stay where we can be accounted for. We also want to stay so that if law enforcement has questions, they need to figure out who the witnesses are. We need all of that. It doesn't just end when it ends. It's a very long process. I can tell you it's usually in a situation like this, it is usually a 2 to 3 day process just to do the investigation on scene. It's very lengthy. Now, you're not going to stay here 2 or 3 days. Okay? They're going to get your information and get you out, and then, of course, they've got to collect evidence. They've got to do all those things. All right? But don't leave until you're instructed to do so from law enforcement. When law enforcement either as a group tells you, hey, you can leave, then you can leave. But if you are going to contact your family, Lori and I talked a little bit about this morning. If you are going to contact your family, because you know Channel 2 and Channel 5 is going to be down here, right? And if you are going to contact them, please ask them not to come here. You just complicate, just let them know, I'm okay, this is what's going on, don't embellish too much. But now, I can tell you if you brought someone's child here and you called them and said, hey, we had a shooter at the church, your child's okay, they're coming. That's life, okay? And like I said, once everything is contained, then you'll be dismissed. All right, next. All right, so your goal is to survive. As many people as can survive can survive. I do want to tell you real quickly when it comes to the defend part. This is something, my partner that is in training with me is also a SWAT leader, and so he gets a lot of really cool training that they get to go to. He went to a training session that the guy, he's actually one of the SWAT team members that went to Columbine. He's also gone to the Colorado Theater shooting, and then one other school shooting he went to. One of the things that they went to on a seminar is from Virginia Tech, the shooter at Virginia Tech. The see something, say something. Before the shooter at Virginia Tech ever shot anybody, the week before he went around and chained doors shut, locked them. The custodian went around and cut the chains off, never said a word to anyone. He left a note laying in the middle of a classroom that said bomb. They picked it up, threw it in the trash can. Okay? When he did actually make his attack, he went from room to room in a building killing people. One of the students that survived talked about her room and what happened in her room. She was shot like 7 times, but still survived. She said he walked into the room and began to shoot them. One of the students attacked him because he knew, I'm going to die either way. Well, he did die. But it so disoriented the shooter that after he shot and killed him, he left that room, went to another room, killed some more people, came back to that room and shot the dead student again several times. Left that room and went to another room. Did this 3 times. He returned back and shot the dead student. Now, we all know, and you have to live with the idea that if something happens, you may die. But you need to understand that your actions may save many people, because there's no telling how many students got out of that building because he was willing to face the threat, and it threw him so off. Most of your attackers are expecting you to be a victim. They're not expecting you to be a challenge, okay? Some people don't survive, and I'm not trying to be cold, not trying to scare anybody, but in a situation when bullets start flying, people die. And I just want you to know that sometimes your braveness and your actions can save many other people. We'll talk really great about you when that happens. We'll talk about what a hero you were, and but just know that it is what the reality of life. All right. A couple of other things, real quick, and it's time to head out. But and I will also want to give a little bit of time for question. But immediately following the second service, we are going to have an emergency response team. That's what we've named our team. It includes medical, it includes security, it includes all those things. If you have abilities or talents that God has given you and you want to use them for this team, we would be glad to have you there. If you cannot come today, because I've already been approached by one person and they've already said, well, I can't come back after the second service. That's fine. Get with me and let me get your information. We'll set up a time to sit down and talk. But we're always looking for people. I have a great team. I cannot brag enough on them. They do a great job. This church is so blessed in the people that we have that have loaned this church or given their talents to God to use to help protect us. All right? So, after church, if you want, after the second service, we'll be meeting. We'll have a little something to eat, so it won't be a big meal. We may not cook you a steak or anything. But, now, I want to open it up real quickly for questions. Anybody have any questions?
How do you identify a member of the team?
One of the things that we have done, and that's a very good question, we've debated this. Do we want everybody to know who the team is? Yes and no. We do want you to know because we want you to be able to come to us if you see a problem. You obviously know I'm a member of the team. If you're a regular here, pretty much all of our law enforcement people are members of the team. But one of the things that we kind of keep, we want to stay low key. We've had people come and say, well, I didn't know you had a team. That's what I like to hear. I don't want necessarily for us to be that pumped up chest team. I want us to be low key, but be ready to respond. Come to me if you do have any questions. Again, usually you'll see us at some point around the front of the building. There's usually one or two people at least around there. But if you come on a regular basis, we'll be glad to introduce you to someone on the team. That's a good question. Thank you, Jeff. Okay, Steve, go ahead.
I'm curious as to how many people here are trained in CPR or certified.
He's asking who all is CPR certified.
Mine has training in CPR. I was in a situation years ago where I needed help doing CPR on somebody. There were a dozen people around and nobody could do anything to help me. And I think this is very important for our school systems and for the church, perhaps to sponsor a course in CPR. I think that's important.
And Steve, we have talked about that. Go ahead, Tara.
I do, and I do have somebody that's gonna come, it's gonna be on a Saturday, I was already putting that together, so I'll email that out to the church. It'll be a little bit of an online portion, and then you'll come here to finish the class, so I'll be looking for that email, but it'll be open to anybody that wants to learn CPR.
So there you go. Any other questions?
Doug, I thank you for this presentation, and one thing you mentioned a little later on in it, but didn't focus, I know you're focusing on active shooter, but there was one time you said something about packages laying around. I think we do need to be aware of some of those. I mean, the threat is not always an active shooter, it may not be weapon related or whatever, but there are others.
Absolutely. And do keep in mind, if you see something, I walked out the front doors the other morning, Sunday, and there was a cooler sitting on the thing, and almost everybody from this church was gone. The parking lot was almost empty, and I thought, well, that's either someone has left something or... Now, Call me stupid if you want to, but I went and opened it up. But and so it got me. Y'all could have said nice things about me, okay? Anything else? But that's a very good point. Be aware of what's going on around you. Look and see. That's one of the things we're going to work on today with our team is kind of some things to be looking for. So we're going to work on that a little bit.
Just a reminder to everybody to think about that. If you're leaving something somewhere, make it pretty obvious what it is, so that we don't have that anxiety.
There you go. Y'all hear that? If you leave something, make it obvious what it is. If you've your Bible book or whatever, or some people have folders or whatever, leave that. So if you put it in a duffel bag and stick it in the corner, that kind of leaves us to guess of what's going on. Okay, all right. Anybody else?
One thing for everybody here, one of the best defenses, I think, for us in church is one of the things we ought to be doing anyways. You see somebody new that you don't recognize, go up and introduce yourself, ask who they are, try to figure out if you can tell them something's wrong with somebody.
Thank you, Jay, and I appreciate that because that is one of the things that I really harp on with our team. Make sure you're shaking people's hands. Make sure you're saying hello to them, introduce yourself. Because if someone actually has bad intentions, they don't want you to know them. They don't want you to know who they are. They don't want you to know where they're from. So get in a conversation with these people. At worst, we've made a really good friend. Okay? All right? Anybody else? All right. Again, I thank you from the emergency response team. I appreciate y'all coming today. I appreciate you taking the time to listen. Hopefully this will be something that we will keep growing on. This is kind of new for us to present to the church, but there's other issues that we can train on a little bit of different things. But thank y'all. If you have any feedback, look, I'm all about being honest. If you saw a problem with something I said, I'll either justify what I just told you, or I'll move away from it. But I do want you to know I appreciate it. I'm open to feedback. Our team is open to feedback. We're always open to learn because none of us on that team, and I was thinking this morning, if I took all the medical and all the law enforcement and military experience on our team, we're probably hundreds of years of experience, but we don't know everything. Okay? So, thank you all again.